Willie D. Live.
I used to want to say, so how did the slave buy themselves out of slavery? Well, since everybody wasn't rich, you had poor white farmers who could not afford to own a slave. On Sundays, slaves had the day off, people who weren't slaves. They went to whoever owned them and said, look, I got Sundays off. I ain't really into church and singing. So my wife is going to go to church and sing. I would like to lease myself out to this other farm, and then we'll do a 60-40 split or 50-50 split. And that's when a teacher, Miss Baraki, who was under Dr. Asa Hilliard's curriculum out of Clark, when Miss Baraki helped me understand that slaves weren't just mindless animals being used. They used their mind. They used their ingenuity. They rented themselves out, kept the money, split the money, and then after a certain taxes paid, now I've bought my wife out. Now my wife will go rent herself out to sew. It's a seamstress in town. I've learned how to sew. It's all I've been doing since I was 5 years old. My skills are valuable to this white woman who needs, so now I go sew. Now you have people that said, even though this horrible thing has happened to us, the skills that I've got from here on a free market on Sundays matter, and they were able to do that. But if we don't give our children the whole truth, they start to think, man, we was just lowly animals and that's all we'll ever be. And that's not the truth. They start to think to themselves, man, the skills I have of barbering or carpentry or electrician, it ain't enough because I didn't go to college. But that's not true. I don't care how much college you have. I got an uncle who's autistic. He can't count $100, but he can build his whole shop. I can count $100. I can't put a hammer and nail to save my life. So who you think gonna be most valuable in the market when they got to rebuild the infrastructure?
Right.
You know, so that, we have to start to see even the worst of suffering has some blessing in it for us. So again, I'm not defending and saying slavery was beneficial in terms of everything was hunky-dory. But even in the midst of slavery, we figured out a way to prevail.
You can make anything beneficial.
We figured out a way to prevail, man. Think about that. We haven't been free 60 years of apartheid. My parents were born in apartheid, 1955 and 1959. Jim Crow was still raging. Apartheid. We couldn't even walk in every door, you know what I mean? But you look at it, look at their son. Their son's a multimillionaire now. Their great-grandchildren will never want if they apply themselves. You understand what I'm saying? That is something to celebrate. So I'm not, I'm never jumping on the side to say, oh, it was good for us. I saw a white boy on TV, he thought he was smart. He said, America was built by white folks and yada, yada, yada. And I thought to myself, you might have laid out, and I'll give you Benjamin Banneker as the perfect example. Whoever the person was that was designed in Washington, D.C., I think it might have been a Frenchman or something, he got pissed off with other white folks in America. He left. If Benjamin Banneker had not had a photographic memory to say, well, these were the plans he laid out, you wouldn't have Washington, D.C. as you have it today. Because he was a lowly assistant, and he remembered. He was the person able to do that. When they burnt the White House down, who were the people that rebuilt it? So when you hear somebody say, y'all didn't build America, I don't even argue with them. Because I own a business, so you can't argue with me. If you give me a choice between free labor and market rate, I'm gonna take free labor all day. So you can't tell me we didn't build America, because I don't care who has drafted up the plans, who put hammer to nail.
Who did the work?
Cotton was one of the most valuable resources in the world. If that cotton didn't get picked by these black hands, and those black hands that were up north working in textiles and industry, if they didn't thread that cotton and make it to something to be sold, what would this country have been? Slavery gave this country a 250-year head start economically. If Haiti wouldn't have sent the French back packing, America never would have had Louisiana, never would have had Texas, or anything worse than that. Because they kicked the French's ass in such a bad way, they had to leave, and economically, they couldn't fight the ex-Brits that were over here anymore for this land. So the reason you even have America, and Frederick Douglass talked about this, the only reason you have it is because a bunch of Haitians kicked a bunch of French folks' ass. And we don't even know the proper arguments, because we've only accepted the fact that we was just lowly slaves. But if you see yourself as just a lowly slave and not the most important cog in the machine, you'll forever have low self-confidence. But if everybody said, man, we ain't picking no cotton got picked, how would the South have gotten rich? Alexander Stephens said, who was the vice president, there's a Stephens County named for him in Georgia. Vice president of the Confederacy said, the cornerstone of the Confederacy is slavery. And it wasn't just we want to keep people as pets.
It was the economic engine.
My brother. It's that simple. So I don't even listen to white folks say, well, you didn't build this country. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. The vice president said it right there. They're just the cornerstone. The cornerstone is the most important piece that's in building the building. So you just have to smile and accept that we suffered through it, but you have to move with the confidence to know you're competent to do it for yourself. There was another Confederate official who was about to lose his land, because when the Union came down, they said, we confiscating all this shit. If you're a white man, you own it, we taking it. One of his enslaved men said, hey, sign it over to me. I'll own it. When they come back, when they leave, I'll sign it over to you. Now, I'm sure he kept some land for himself, but his master wasn't even smart enough to broker that deal. We got a brother, I forget his name. His name was Biggs. I think Robert Biggs was in South Carolina, stole a Confederate ship, got the Confederate ship up to the Union Army, flashed and let it know over to him. They ought to have somebody said they ought to have a movie about him. But they don't want you to hear that because they don't want you to think, oh man, you was just lowly. And I don't mean just the people who oppressed you. It's some people that benefit from your oppression that look like you. They say you're your friend, but they got them 501c3s, boy. They can't get no donations. They can't live as high as they. So they need you to think you only vibrated low. Man, you've been outsmarting oppression your whole way here. You've been resisting your whole way here. The whole 400-500 years you've been here, you've been pushing back. You've been figuring it out. And you're going to keep doing that. And that's the confidence you have to have. What happened to us was wrong. The way they do us now is wrong. But boy, when your mind is right and you move righteous, it's amazing what you're able to do. Look what Marcus Garvey was able to do. You know, I don't care what you think about. I tell people I don't argue between Abrahamic religion. I don't argue Jewish, Muslim, or Christian because they all had the same father in Abraham. So that's family fights, and I don't get in the middle of family fights. What I say, though, is you show me another organization that takes men that have thought less of themselves, that have been on the bottom, women that have been used, that have been abused, that are coming out of prison, coming out of doldrums of addiction. You show me another organization that gives you fine, upstanding citizens like that, then I say, man, I might be wrong, but I know I'm not wrong. Because I knew my brother before he got in the nation. Yes, and I know him now. I know his wife and his children. I see the business he set for himself. So anything and everything is possible when you believe. Their job is to get you to disbelieve. And I'm not just talking about your clear and open enemy. Yeah. Some people profit from your disbelief. And as long as you let them profit from your disbelief by not believing in yourself, then it continues. Everybody sees a rise in homelessness now. I say, man, why do we see such a rise in homelessness? Like, this is crazy. Because it's not just your city. It's in every city. All I do is travel around the world singing and dancing. But I'm like, but now they're saying they got monies coming in. And they say, well, if we solve the homeless crisis, no money keeps coming. Well, if no money keeps coming, how do I keep my job as special advisor to homelessness committee? Right. You know, when you look at gang violence in Los Angeles, many of the brothers that started 501c3s that were former gang members that are effective at ending the violence, they say, well, Michael, when the violence drops too low, then they drop the police budgets to combat violence. Right. So then they take our money, and then violence rises up again, and then the policemen get more money, the police forces get more, and then they double back around us and say, well, we got some more money for it. Well, that's a wicked system because it requires violence for the state to get more money and for the people who really trying to solve the problem. At some point, if the brothers just say, we're not doing it. Yeah. We're not going to kill each other.
Because if you solve the problem, then you can't get funding for the solution.
Absolutely.
Man, let's give a killer Michael. Okay, so I know you saw the fight this weekend.
Nah, I was on stage, man. But I saw clips, man. It was woo.
Yeah, it was a rough one.
Yeah.
Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr.
Yeah.
The one side of the fair. I'm a huge Errol Spence fan.
Yeah.
Was then, still am now. Yeah. Right? But shout out to Terrence Crawford. I wanted Errol Spence to win, but I didn't want Terrence Crawford to lose. Yeah. But the point I wanted to make is, I like the way both of these brothers held a very, very high level production, but it never got disrespectful.
No, class act.
So it was very classy. And they both made, I think, like 8 figures. They both fed their families. And it may not have been the outcome that some of us wanted. Yeah. What is the importance of us as black people being able to compete and collaborate at the same time without attacking one another?
We got to get rid of ego and insecurity. One thing I want to mention, I think I saw Spence had bought like 65 acres of land. Yeah. And he said, I never grew up around horses and cattle and all that. He did that, and he said he was buying like 200 more. That was just a beautiful thing. Yeah. And seeing how Crawford and he enacted afterwards was just class. Like, you know, everything about our culture It's not been bad. Even if you look at gang culture, some things I learned when the brothers say, man, well, we just gonna run a fade. You know, we've been talking about each other too long.
Let's just
go behind that. Ain't nobody turn their phones off.
Right.
We gonna get it off of that. On the other side, we gonna wipe the blood off. We gonna hug, and we did that. You know what I mean? And I respect that because at the end of the day, we men. You know, and at the end of the day, we men and women, and we're gonna have differences. But it's important again that if we doing it on television as a sport in front of people, that no matter how competitive we get, no matter how much shit talk we give each other, when we get out that field, we still black people. We still gotta love one another. We still gotta speak highly and respectfully of one another. You know what I mean? And I learned that lesson when I watched Ali and Frazier. You know, Ali later just said, you know, he understood some of the things he said was too mean. He didn't understand he was really poking his brother. And Frazier, eventually they reconciled. And that was a beautiful thing. But we got to seek reconciliation with each other. I forget which holiday it's named for, but again, I got one of my Jewish friends told me about, they have I think maybe Yom Kippur. I think it's Yom Kippur, where they get together and you get the chance to ask once a year to be forgiven. Right. Look, man, look, man, I know I did you wrong. And the person has the right to forgive or not forgive, but you come back next year like, hey, I know I was wrong. You know what I mean? And just because you forgive somebody don't mean you have to be buddy don't mean you have to hang out. But you do have to let that burden off yourself. You know, because if you carry that burden, man, it'll carry into cancer, it'll carry into disease, it'll carry into mental illness, it'll carry into a lot of stuff that you don't deserve to be carried into, because what you're doing is you holding a burden that ain't meant for you to hold. You know, ultimately God is the judge, you not. So you don't have, you should try to carry that load. It's not meant for you. So I think that the way those brothers handled themselves was a class act. I think that, you know, I love what Deion Sanders and Andre Rison talked about when they played each other when Deion first left, and they got fighting on the field really quickly. And Deion said, we just had to get it out. And after that, and man, he's such a class act. I'm so glad Coach has been a friend and mentor to me the last couple of years. You know what I mean?
Deion Sanders?
Yeah, I've learned so much from him. You know, he called me. I was in the mall, and he called like twice. Like, Coach called me. He said, I'm just calling to see how you doing. He said, yeah, it's me. I'm just like, God damn, it's Deion. But he's such an open and transparent person in terms of his downfalls, his shortcomings, his thinking, his triumphs. That as a man, I've learned a lot by watching him. So seeing him talk about him and Rison and how they were super competitive, but in that moment after they got it out, it's over. And brothers gonna have to start being like that, you know, because you know you can't apologize to your brother once he dead. So why kill him?